Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Candidates Tournament, the most important tournament of 2026. And if you win the Candidates, you play against the world champion in 6 months. I had to speedrun the intro because this is the 11th round. So you're either here or you're not here. I kind of doubt that you would not watch the first 10 rounds of this tournament. If you haven't, they're in the playlist. 14-round, double round robin. Caruana Sindarov from Uzbekistan is absolutely obliterating the field with a 2-point lead against the Giri with 4 rounds to go. It's now or never. Someone has to beat Sindarov, and Giri has to win basically every game. Can he pull off a historic comeback? I think Sindarov's odds to win this thing are like 96% right now. Well, the women's candidates, it's like a 7-horse race. Basically, anybody can win it, we're going to get into the games today. First things first, we have Fabiano Caruana taking on the one and only Uzbek Phenom. I mean, it's as good a time as ever, right? Fabi looking for revenge against Sindarov. Sindarov beat him with the white pieces in their game earlier in the round robin. Fabi once again opening with knight f3. And the first 15 moves of this game were played like two guys that memorized, the spelling bee, basically. So we got d5 taking the center. Fabi went c4 playing his typical English thing, and then it was a decline, and then they went for a Catalan. And Sindarov obviously had the Catalan prepared for this tournament, which is one of the main openings for white. He took on c4. Fabi played a very forcing line, knight e5. It's not the most common move nowadays. They're playing queen c2 to try to get their pawn back. He went knight e5. Black plays the best move, which is striking back at the middle, basically saying, if you take this pawn, I'm going to take that pawn, so you should probably take my knight. And white obliges, giving up the Catalan light squared bishop, because after takes and the queen moving, this position has been historically known to be very playable and very interesting. And the key equalizing idea for black in many lines is to play the move c5. Now, if you look at the database here, the move that's about to be played is a rare one. It's a weird move for sure. It's bishop 2e3. That move has not really been played. And it baits black into the move knight to d5, right? Just kind of getting in the way, trying to go for this bishop. Now, bishop e3 is a ridiculous concept. It is a very ugly looking move. And it does look like if black plays bishop b7, just a couple moves later, white will get mated. But that's actually not true. In fact, if black doesn't play very accurately, if something like h6 were to happen, white has just simple improving ideas like queen c2, knight c3. And honestly, like in an absolutely dream world, white could actually pull off this position where he would be totally happy. Knight c3, queen d2, rook e1, right? This is actually not super stupid. Unfortunately, we don't live in a dream world, and Sindarov has known everyone's openings this tournament. Fabi goes queen c1. We're going to see who's going to be the first guy to actually think in this game, because chess is all a memorization game now. Rook takes b2. Sindarov's still in his prep. Rook b1. Both guys have clearly analyzed this position with their own computers. And now f3. And now Sindarov is like, all right, I know that this is the position. Let me think a little bit. He plays the best move. That is the best way to activate the bishop, because it needs to go to that diagonal, and it couldn't do that on b7. Fabi plays king f2. Both guys are still literally following the top line of engine play. Fabi plays d5. That's the best move. See, the bishop is very strong here, and d5 forces it back. You can't take, you would lose your queen. And now we have rook b7, and Sindarov plays queen d6, and they're still following the top line of the computer. This is like, I'm not even exaggerating. It's as if Stockfish is playing Stockfish. Like, if you set Stockfish down and told it, Stockfish, I want you to play the Catalan, and with black was also Stockfish, this is legitimately what would happen. Both guys have literally not memorized. They memorized probably literally until like here, and they have recalled the concepts of the position up until this moment, and they have this position to work with. So it's actually a very dynamic endgame because many of the pieces have been traded. These pawns for black could be a little bit weak, and this knight could pose some problems on the dark squares. It's not a very easy game, and Sindarov doesn't play the best way. I think here he needed to play rook c8. He had to trade the rook. He goes here. There's nothing really wrong with this move. But now Fabi's going to go to work. And if you gave me Magnus Carlsen with white in this position, and I know that makes some people unhappy. They're like, why do you always bring him up? Like, he's not the only guy that can play endgames. Yeah, but he's the best. So maybe stop crying. Just food for thought. Rook c5, attacking the pawn. Now rook c6, attacks it. And Sindarov's position's pretty ugly. Sindarov tries to bring his king to the middle and just straight up chucks a pawn. Fabi's game has worked out beautifully. I mean, Fabiano Caruana has Sindarov in his worst position in 2 weeks. Yeah, the first round of the tournament, Sindarov was doing poorly with white. This is Sindarov's worst position in 10 rounds. Fabi's just not up a pawn. I'm sorry, he won his pawn back. That was, if you counted pawns up until here, Fabi's not up a pawn, but it feels that way. It feels like he just won a very important pawn. And he has an outside pass pawn. So he has a pawn, a rook, and a knight, and a king ready to join at a moment's notice. Sindarov's position is very challenging. He goes rook b8. Fabi plays rook a7 check, forcing the king out this way. Now he has many options. He plays rook e7, rook b6 defending himself, and now g4. g4 is a nice move, controlling the king. Maybe you want to go for h4. In retrospect, maybe Fabi should have brought his king and not gone for g4, because as good of a move as it was, it helps Sindarov come up with a very nice idea to immediately lash out at this structure, and when taken, to go here. So Sindarov sacrifices a pawn, but in doing so, he basically completely stalls this side of the board. Like, Fabi's doubled h-pawns aren't going to move forward, and maybe instead of g4, Fabi could have gone king e1, and then if Sindarov went h5, you know, white could theoretically play h4 and stop this, but continue to make progress in the future. There's other ideas, obviously, but it's a very mysterious endgame. I would need to call Magnus to kind of understand the best protocol of walking the king, moving the a-pawn, putting the rook on the right square. Sindarov defends it very nicely. Fabi goes now with his king. Bishop e6, he's holding serve, king d2, and he makes it over there. Now, apparently here, you could trade the rooks and try to win the knight versus bishop endgame, but we have rook c6, Sindarov tenaciously defending himself. I mean, a4's on the way. It's just about the worst position that he's had. Sindarov has to be very accurate now. He plays the best move with rook a7. King b2, he plays the best move with king h5. And king a3. Fabi is going to bring the king and the knight and the pawn. How is this one rook gonna stop the avalanche that's coming? And you can't even push this pawn because I control it. This bishop is purely defensive. It's a really bad position for Java here. Rook b7, knight b5. White is gonna go king b4, a5, a6, a7. White is just about to win the game. Sindarov says not so fast. You know what Sindarov's nickname would be if he was a fighter? King. Call him King Darov. Because in this position, my man shows up with the only move to hold serve, king g5. The king, from the outermost point of the board, reminds everybody of his presence, and he wants to go here, here, and eat these pawns, and also here, here, and here to support the promotion of the c-pawn. And Fabiano Caruana no longer has the time to organize what I'm talking about. If you go king to b4, and I go king f4 and you play a5, you lose because of rook b5, king b5, and bishop e8, and I don't know how Sindarov manages to do this every single time. Bro is on another level. Like, even his defenses are just in time, and I think around here I must have sunken in for Fabi, like, I'm not winning. This is nuts. Because he spent 38 minutes on his next move. A man does not spend 38 minutes on his next move if he likes his position. He plays fast. Also, Sindarov was down on time this game for the first time in this entire tournament. Folks, that was it. Fabi pushed the pawn this far. He got this close to beating Sindarov. And Sindarov took it all the way. Rook a6 check, bishop e8, just in time. You chop the knight, you take the pawn. And even if this game got a little bit more fancy and aggressive toward the end, Sindarov was just in time. He got all his counterplay. He won the final pawn, and rook and knight versus rook is an automatic draw at the grandmaster level. Rook and bishop versus rook, there are ways to try to checkmate. The bishop is a much more powerful piece in the endgame, but this is not possible. I know it might sound crazy. What if he hangs a fork? Yeah, I don't know. What if pigs fall out of the sky? I have no idea, but like, that's not going to happen. All right. Knight f6, rook c5, rook c7, sorry, rook c5. And the game ends with this fancy little check. Knight e3, knight c2. The knight is going to stop the pawn. The boys don't even play it out till mate. You know who really hates this result? Giri. because he needs Sindarov to lose. Nobody else is going to win this tournament with 4 rounds to go. Can you believe that 1 week before the candidates tournament is over, 6 of the other players can't even win it? You literally have to play a tournament for a week that you can't win. They don't care if they get 5th or 4th or 8th. You're trapped in a nightmare where every day you need to play a 4-hour chess game and not lose to humiliate yourself. And there is no prize for you anymore because a 20-year-old from Uzbekistan decided to absolutely obliterate all of you. Crazy stuff. Now, the only man that can change the trajectory of this tournament is Anish Giri. And Anish Giri has been disappointing me since he basically made this a 2-horse race. I said before the tournament, I don't believe Anish Giri is going to win this thing because he's not going to take his chances at the right moments. He's not going to create enough chances over the course of the tournament. To his credit, he's won some incredible games thus far. He has been clutch. But he has to keep winning, and that's just not the style of game that he brings. He doesn't play fearless chess like Sindarov. Now, in this game, he's playing Esipenko, Soviet school of chess, and, Andrei is, despite having a bad tournament, he's not going to lose every game. That's really not how it goes. He's just kind of had a bad run. Anish Giri gets one of the most Anish Giri positions of all time. Like, this is Anish Giri masterclass, positional game, queenside pressure. Black has to, find good defensive resources like knight e5, where he loses a knight for a knight, and if knight b7, you have rook b8. Typical Giri position, and in typical Giri fashion, he actually massages the position very well. The pieces go to great squares, king f2, gentle improving moves, g4. Now h4 is a fantastic move to try to open up another front of attack. Knight c4 is a move from Esipenko, and around here, the advantage really started blossoming. I think here, rook d1, this was the biggest advantage Anish had. It was a 0.8 game from 0.2. Now, from here, you got to kind of keep improving. Maybe king g3, those knights control everything. Maybe b3 to control knight c4, so that's all shut down. Maybe then we move the bishop when the knight goes somewhere. Double up on the h file, keep creating chances. Maybe you even play f4 at some point when the king's on g3. f4, because g4 is protected. It's much easier to move his pieces. He does play king g3. But then he takes this bishop, which is the big decision. He didn't have to. He could have maybe kept the bishops on and went for f4. That was another key idea. But he takes. And now he plays this idea of f4. Rook g8. And just as we thought we were getting something, we get absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. And this is just a draw. And I gotta tell you, I know it's one thing to sit here, like a sports fan, right? Sitting at their television, yelling at their favorite team when they themselves are incapable of playing that sport or maybe any other sport, let alone getting up off the couch might win them or whatever. Like, we're all guilty of it. But I really am the meme where you are poking the other, being like, do something, please. Like, Anish Giri got, and this is Giri 101. But then he just didn't take his chance. I think maybe the knight for bishop trade wasn't the best to keep the winning chances alive. And then, he took, and when he took, he probably thought he had some chances here, but there are no chances. There's just no chances. Very good defense from Esipenko, and Anish Giri is still 2 points behind. Guys, I'm not rooting against Sindarov. I'm rooting for the tournament not to be over in round 11. So they're still 2 points apart. There's 3 games to go. And they have to play each other, I understand. That's basically the only round that Giri has to pull something back. But Sindarov then, if he draws 2 games and loses, and Giri wins the rest of the games, that's the only way that he's going to catch him. Hikaru Wei Yi was over in like 30 seconds. It was also a Catalan. It was a mainline Catalan. I think Hikaru came with, no, they just literally repeated the moves. Hikaru burned 35 minutes here, and then they just, I don't know. I told you, when the candidates tournament is going poorly, it goes really poorly. This, you don't even want to play. This game was really exciting. Pragg has definitely been, the biggest, shock of the tournament, I would say, in a negative way, because people were calling him a top 3 finisher. I was saying he's just below Fabi and Hikaru. I thought Sindarov and he were kind of like the 2 players that were going to make something happen, potentially. In this game, Pragg built up a nice opening advantage against Bluebaum's Petrov. He had a very powerful knight in the middle of the board. He was kind of riding this nice position. Rook e3. Instead of rook e1, he could have went for queen f5 first. And queen f5 developed some very strong attacking possibilities with rook g3, I guess, and maybe even rook, on the king side here. And if queen f5, g6, you actually just come back, and then the knight on f6 is very weak, and you have some cool attacking ideas there. He went rook e1. It doesn't really matter. The position was equal. He was pressuring throughout the game. He was comfortable on the clock, and then he got a winning chance. His pressure paid off. He attacked the rook over here. He went back to e5, and then right here, Bluebaum blundered. Pragg is winning on the board. Completely winning, actually. Like, winning in one move. 5 minutes on the clock. So, rook e8 doesn't work. Sorry, rook e8 stops knight f7 because you take the queen, and it stops rook f7 because after rook f7, you would take the knight, queen e5, king f7, right? Except rook e8, rook f7 doesn't work whatsoever. Rook e5 fails to queen a7. So rook f7 here, and you team your queen up with your rook on that empty square, and you just win. You win the game. It's mate. Rook g7 it's mate. Rook g7, and then the queen comes in. The only move that black has to survive here is bishop to d3. After rook g7, king h8, there is no mate on h7. Well, that's extremely convenient because you could basically move your rook anywhere. Even to b7, which would be completely unnecessary. But you can play like rook f7 to go rook f8. But, of course, then king g8, you can go rook c7. And this is winning because you have checkmate. And if the rook goes back, queen d4 and queen g7. Pragg has 5 minutes to find rook f7, which is obviously the move. But then he misses queen a7. They both miss it. He goes here. Even queen g5 was good. Queen g5 he could have played. He could have taken on g5. And after this, Bluebaum catches him with a beautiful little move, which is bishop to d3. And bishop to d3 opens up queen back to b8, fork, and attacking the queen. So now white has to settle with queen e5, and now queen g7 is a mate threat. Black goes here, and the players make a draw by repetition. Yeah, this is round 11 of the candidates if both players are out of the running. I mean, you are missing tactics. You know, games are not at the quality. Because to be honest, I think you have kind of... Well, Bluebaum has not. Bluebaum never showed up to Cyprus thinking he was going to win. He probably thought he's going to make 14 draws and get the sweep. But Pragg thought he was going to win the tournament. I mean, I'm just hypothesizing, right? Like, Bluebaum in all the interviews before was like, yeah, you know, okay, I'm certainly not a favorite, but... You know, he was definitely coming to, like, win some games if he had some chances. Pragg was supposed to win the tournament. Like, that was... He showed up with that mindset. You know, Pragg, Giri, Hikaru, Fabi. Like, I think maybe 5 of the players showed up with, like, I'm going to win this thing. And then only one can. This is disappointing from Pragg, you know. He's on 4.5 out of 11. Definitely not the best run for him. Yeah, and that's super tough, you know. Now, on the women's side, lovers of close tournaments will be rejoicing because basically anybody can still win this thing with 4 rounds to go, and it's all going to come down to clutch decision-making, nerves, and, you know, not panicking under time trouble. Today, we have Goryachkina versus Vaishali, which if you look at the standings, Vaishali's winning the tournament, and Goryachkina can catch her if she beats her. And then all the 5.5s can kind of go forward and make a run for it. We have d4, d5, knight f3, knight f6, and now a sideline c3. The sideline c3 basically baits black into a very complicated variation with c5. And if black doesn't play c5, then you get to play a London, having avoided some of the stuff. Like if black was going to play bishop f4, c5, for example, you avoid that. And now after e6, we get a mainline London, which is not something that happens very often, much anymore. I think it's the first London of the whole candidates. Queen b3, trying to trade, open up the a file for the rook. Vaishali plays bishop d7, which is the top move, although spends some time remembering it, develops, and then both sides castle. The London is a very rich middle game position. A lot of pawn structural decisions. Do you move the c or e pawn? Do you put the knight on e5? Knight e5, there it is. The bishop goes to e8. That's why she moved the rook out of the way. And then white begins an attack, which is kind of hard to do because the queen is on the other side of the board, and it's even harder to attack somebody when the queens have been traded. But she keeps going, and it's actually not even an attack, maybe. It's like a structural damage type of thing because, you know, black has some weaknesses now. This could be a problem. Like bishop f6, bishop f3 is an idea. It's a very rich position. So we have knight back to c6. White plays a3, so that pawn's never weak. My nose is itchy. It's seasonal allergies time, and I'm losing my mind. Taking an antihistamine a day. Rook to f1, knight takes, rook takes. The position is equal. The London is equal at the master level. It's really difficult to actually get something going. But the players are going to get low on time, and that's when things are going to get a little bit chaotic. Vaishali playing fantastic, neutralizing with the black pieces. Rook e5, rook e5. Yeah, Goryachkina not developing anything here. And then things start to get a little bit weird. So after takes, you undouble black structure, but then your idea is to go c4 to attack the structure once again, but it does leave you with a little bit of a questionable pawn on e3. Then she chops on d5. Now her e-pawn is just weak, actually. And then she offers a trade of bishops, which apparently is just losing. Like, it's just a losing blunder because black can go here. And the reason that was so bad, the reason that, like, the trade was so bad is that knight d7 traps your rook. After bishop c4 from Goryachkina, black simply rejects the trade, and you cannot take this pawn because after b6, your rook is trapped. Rook e5, knight d7. So takes here. She has to go there because rook e5, knight d7. That's crazy. That Goryachkina just planted her rook there, offered the trade, thinking that this move was impossible. It's completely possible. And she blunders her rook. This is the candidates. Even if you're winning, late game, anything can happen in time trouble, and the pressure and the nerves and the exhaustion. And Vaishali Ramesh Babu, after starting the tournament, definitely a bit rougher than she had wanted, connects her pieces, brings the king, and it's mate. It's mate because you go king g3, and then you pick a square to checkmate your opponent on the first rank. Goryachkina down. Vaishali 7 points out of 11 games. I mean, she's not Sindarov, but hey, it's pretty dominant performance from her. I think she has 4 wins in her last 6 games. So she did what she did last candidates, but a little bit less dramatic. Last candidate, she lost 4 games in a row and then won 5 games in a row. This game, she lost 1 game, and then she tasted like the blood on the lip and was like, wait a minute, I'm going to punch everybody else in the face. And that's what she's doing. She has 4 wins since her loss, and she's winning the tournament with 3 rounds to go. But as we know, anything can happen. Will anything happen is the question, right? That's really what everybody's wondering. We have a Catalan in this game. I apologize. A Queen's Indian. B6 from Muzychuk. Muzychuk, one of the most solid players in the field, constantly getting her solid positions and her structures that she likes. She actually beat Lagno in the first go-round of the round robin. But this one, not too much happened here. The players shuffled around their pieces. If anybody was taking over, it was the player from the black side. But like a Giri game almost. You know, we got the trade, and then we were left with a bit of an imbalance, but very quickly it became this. And actually, white has some potential here, apparently. Like, white can play bishop c4, force the knight to move, play a4, and then maybe bring the king faster. But no, this is going to be a draw. And the players cannot afford a lot more half of points if a player is going to start winning their games. Vaishali on 7, Muzychuk on 6, and Lagno on 5.5. And yeah. We just saw the game there between Vaishali and Goryachkina is back. You know, Goryachkina will stay at 5. Zhu Jiner versus Divya Deshmukh. Divya just lost in the previous game. There we have a Rosalimo Sicilian, but black turns it back into a d6. I think that's called, I don't even remember. There's like a canal attack maybe. Knight c3, castles. And white has this extremely annoying pawn structure. This is actually the second time in a row. I think Zhu Jiner went for this structure because Muzychuk played this structure against Divya. Remember that game? I think that was the last game that Divya won. And I think the chess gods looked down at her after that game and were like, that was not cool. Yeah, that was a game where Anna Muzychuk put a lot of pressure and then totally lost the thread in the time trouble. This one was totally different. Black got a very good position. If anybody had an advantage, it was black because white just can't make much progress. She took over the game very nicely. And actually right around here on the time control, rook d5 was played, and she had a better endgame here. Again, this is one of these things, like, I give this position to Magnus. I don't understand what happened here. Divya could have played rook g8, and white cannot defend the pawn, because if you go here, it's very passive. Knight f4 in the pin. She probably saw knight d4, rook g3, knight e6, and didn't quite trust her calculations here because knight d8 is coming. But apparently after king f6, which is an easy move to put on a board and not an easy move to play, white does not have an easy path with the knight. If you go knight g5, nothing happens. I take this. And if you go here to try to get the pawn on b7, knight f4, knight b7, and knight to d3 is possible. So I'm not sure what Divya did not like here with this move king f6. Maybe she missed how strong it was. Maybe she missed the move entirely. That also happens. Maybe she thought these pawns are getting taken. But apparently this endgame is very decent for black with good chances. She also might have just wanted to make a draw. That also is a reasonable strategy. And the players do, in fact, make a draw. Divya had a chance to maybe press for a little bit more, but not too much happened. And here we have a game between the potential spoiler of the tournament, Tan Zhongyi, who has 3.5. She's likely not going to win it with the amount of games to go, but she's certainly going to bring a couple of people down into the mud with her. And that's the way a spoiler works. And in this game, Bibisara went for a Sicilian. The players are all playing Sicilians because they all really want to win. And Tan Zhongyi made this absolutely miserable for black. I mean, she is blitzing a lot of her games, by the way. Here she had a big advantage. She could have went knight c6. She didn't go for knight c6. But that didn't matter because she kept trying, kept poking, kept improving the position. She has an extra pawn against Bibisara's 2 bishops. And there's going to be a moment here where the game goes into the endgame. About to see it. So knight b2. The players start trading a lot of pieces as we near an endgame. Rook d3. You're going to have a huge swap here. I mean, it looks like it is a miracle this black king is not mated. Queen d4, very clutch defensive move. Any double check here doesn't work. You just simply move the king, and the queen cannot continue with the journey. And so we get an endgame, and within just a few moves of entering the rook endgame, Tan Zhongyi is completely winning on the board. And you are going to see it's not that complicated. Rook h4, king g3, rook h1. And this is a draw if black simply loses one pawn and brings the king closer. So right now with white, if you play rook takes g6, I simply come here, and it's a draw because I'm going to get to f5. Like, you can't bring your king up. So rook g5 here, king f4. Like, this is a draw. It's a draw in several ways. Maybe not h4. h4 is a little bit suspicious, but it's just a draw. I mean, you can't win this. It'll take a little effort. So the way you have to win this, you have to play king f4. And now that the king won't get close, white is winning. So king e6, rook g6, king f7, and Tan Zhongyi here is winning with the very straightforward rook to h6. And I think what she missed, because her idea is king g5 and to take the pawn, I think she missed that after king g7, king g5, rook g1, she's not winning the pawn, right? But she is. Rook g6 check. And then, and only then, do you go here. And you win. You have 2 extra pawns. Bibisara's tournament is hanging by a thread, and white has 10 minutes to find rook h6, king g5. Maybe she thought also rook h6 this, and this endgame is not a win, but it's a win. Because after this, you just go forward. But you can also play king g3. Maybe king g5 is not winning. But anyway, I mean, you just control this position. It must be winning. But she didn't find that. She went here. And Bibisara ended up in an endgame, very famous endgame, of rook h and f. So Bibisara ended up losing her pawn, which was completely unnecessary. Her only way to defend here was this, and she lost both pawns, but this is a drawn endgame, believe it or not. It's impossible to actually push the pawns, and at some point, black will win one of the pawns, or just keep giving checks. And yeah, this is shockingly a draw. You simply cannot run away from the checks. And Bibisara defended it very well. So that is how the 11th round concluded. 6 draws and 2 victories. On the women's side, Vaishali 7, then 2 people with 6. And in the next round, one of the 6s is playing a 7. There you go. And Lagno Muzychuk is playing Goryachkina, and Goryachkina is going to try to take her head off because 5 versus 6, right? You got to catch up. It's going to be very exciting. And for the men, I mean, I'm just every day I'm sad and disappointed. At this point, mostly at Giri. But I mean, at how the whole thing turned out. Again, I have nothing against Sindarov. I love his style of chess, and I do think he's a favorite in the upcoming match against Gukesh, should he win this tournament. I love how he plays. I just kind of wish the tournament didn't end a week early. So in the next round, Hikaru is going to try to play for a win against Sindarov with black. And if he loses, the tournament is over. That's just right. That's my prediction. I think in round 12, Hikaru is going to try to beat Sindarov, and he might, but he also might lose, and that'll be that. And that's it. That's all I have for you today. Make sure to watch the recap as well of the PogChamp 7 tournament on chess.com. Happened late yesterday during the rest day, Friday, April 10th. And my boy won. My student won. My students have now won 2 PogChamp tournaments back-to-back, so I'm very proud about that. Yeah, get out of here.